Hello YouTube, it is Atticus, and welcome to my Dark Elf Monster Guide for Total War Warhammer 2. This will be for multiplayer specifically. So yeah, this is the long-awaited monster guide that I promised. I knew it took me several months to get to this one, but I was in my spring semester of school, so I've just been really busy. But now that we're on summer break, I'm going to be able to put out some more guides. Finishing up with the Dark Elves, I had a request to do some High Elf guides, which will probably be the next one I do. And yeah, some strategies and things like that. So in this guide, this one is obviously going to be a shorter one since the Dark Elves are kind of limited with how many monsters that they do have. But we're going to look at them pretty comprehensively, in detail. We're going to try to learn about what makes the Dark Elf units good, what are some of their traits, when should you bring them, when should you not, and yeah, just kind of take a magnifying glass to things such as the Hydra, the Crudest, the Manticore, and yeah, we'll just get a good feel. So hopefully by having this knowledge, it'll make you guys a little bit more proficient and a little bit better with the Dark Elf monster units. So let's go ahead and start. So, the Dark Elves Monsters of War, this is some general information about them that I think kind of summarizes them perfectly. So, starting with, they're limited in number and variety. So yeah, if you think about it, the Dark Elves only have what? They have a Charybdis, a Hydra, and a Manticore is their, a Black Dragon as their primary monsters. Now, you do have a Regent of Renown version of the Chilla Centaur, but I covered that in my Cavalry guide. So, yeah, just for any of you guys who are new to the channel, I also did do a Dark Elf unit guide and a Dark Elf Cavalry guide, which I will link in the description, just so you know. So, yeah, they're limited in number and variety, but that doesn't mean they're not good. Where they lack in numbers, they definitely make up with just how strong they are. They're deadly, but with a catch, meaning that, yeah, the Dark Elf monsters are very powerful. They have really unique traits, things such as like poison attacks through the Charybdis, or the Abyssal Hell, or breath attacks like with the dragon. But when I say catch, one of those catches might be both the Charybdis and the Hydra have a weakness to fire. So yeah, you get a little give and you get a little take with these monsters. They have amazing aesthetics, meaning that they look really, really cool. Like, who hasn't looked at the Charybdis and just stared at the model zoomed in? It just looks so cool. It's like something from Greek mythology. Dual purposes. Many of the units have dual purposes, meaning like the Charybdis, for example, is primarily an anti-large specialist, but can be used for his Abyssal Hell, which lowers leadership to wreck front lines. So we'll get into this a little bit later, but yeah. Or you can use a Black Dragon for air supremacy, or you can use it for breath attacks to just melt, archer units or things like that. You can use a Manticore to counter Ripperdactyls, or you can use it to shut down Dwarven Quarrelers. Where they're very limited, like I was saying in numbers, they have a lot of different roles. Another important attribute of the Dark Elf monsters is that they're fairly priced. And when I say fairly priced, I'm specifically talking about things like the Manticore. For 800 gold, you're getting something that has like 400-something weapon strength that causes terror. For, I think it's 1,600 for a base Hydra, 1,800 for the Charybdis. Like, these are pretty decent prices if you think about, like, for example, a Shagif costs like 2,000, and you put a Charybdis against a Shagif, the Charybdis is going to win, specifically for his poison damage, which really kind of makes it, balanced out. Another really important thing to note is that, two of the units have regeneration, which is the Hydra and the Chilla Centaur. Unfortunately, the Crudest does not. I kind of wish it did, since it is kind of, made from the same cloth as the Hydra, but yeah, unfortunately it doesn't. But the regeneration is such a powerful tool for the Hydra and the Chilla Centaur. That can really, turn games for you, especially if it like routes and runs off the map, and then, or not runs off the map, but runs away from the battle. You give it like a minute or two to regenerate, and then you throw it back into combat. Yeah, that can win you a game for you. Another important attribute is the mobility, with the Charybdis specifically, and the Black Dragon and the Manticore. The Charybdis has aquatic, so yeah, the aquatic trait allows him to fight on water, which we'll get into that a little bit later as well. Or, you have 2 monsters that can fly. So the Manticore, the Black Dragon, who does have like 90 speed, I do believe maybe it's 80 speed. But that's just really powerful. To have some, a 500 plus weapon strength monster capable of flying that fast is, this gives you a lot of options about where to attack, where to pull away, kind of get your unit into combat pretty effectively. Another important trait is the debuffs and breath attacks, as I kind of mentioned before. The debuffs being the Terror for one, the Abyssal Hell, and then the breath attacks. We have several different kinds. We have things such as the fire breath attacks of the Hydra. We have the frost attacks of the Chill of Centaur. Those each one have important roles. Like, you wouldn't want to use fire attacks against something like Fireborn, but the Chill of Centaur would be really good against it if it's ice attacks. There would be no fire resistance from it. The terror-causing platform is what I consider most of the monsters of the Dark Elves. What I mean by that is, just imagine them as just a orb of terror. It's just always going to be impacting engagements all wherever you put the monster unit. So you land a Manticore into a unit of clan rats, well, it's just became a terror-causing platform. The Crudest in a 30-meter radius is causing -8 leadership. That's but plus causing terror itself, which is why I call them terror-causing platforms. And also one of the other noteworthy attributes of the Dark Elf monster units is that one of them is an anti-large monster, and that's really cool. I mean, Chaos has one through the Shagif, the Lizardmen have one through the Carnosaur, but the High Elves don't have an anti-large monster. Let's see here. Vampires have one through the Terrorgeist, and the Wood Elves do not have an anti-large one as well. They just have the Tree Men. So I think that's just kind of cool. There's like 3 or 4 armies that have anti-large specific monsters. Now, not talking about Cav, I'm talking about monsters. So this right here is the actual Total War official YouTube channel and their introduction to the War Hydra, and I thought this was really cool. So we're just gonna play it here and just let you guys kind of see this, just to get an idea about the War Hydra.
Deep in the obsidian peaks of Nagaroth, bone-littered caves signify the presence of a beast so foul, so very savage that only a people as twisted as the
there's good old Malekith.
The 5-headed War Hydra is a flame-spewing blur of snapping jaws
so cool.
to a vast-scale frame. To witness such a monstrosity on the field of battle is to face your nightmares made manifest. Those who avoid immolation in the Hydra's fiery breath are trampled to jam beneath its colossal weight, and any left standing are destined to die the very worst of deaths, as a toothsome mid-battle morsel for this...
watch this, guys. This is so cool. Smack. That princess ain't gonna last too long here. Goodbye. Okay, so that princess, she did her final charge all heroically, but she just got freaking destroyed by that Hydra. So guys, that just kind of gives you a sneak peek about the Hydra. I think that's just a really cool trailer. Thank you to CA for making that. So let's go ahead and look into the Hydra, guys, now that we just saw it destroy a princess. So, the Hydra, little lore about it, is a titanic beast of the mountains whose ill-tempered and ravenous nature has proven the doom of many unsuspected morsels. So, that pretty much summarizes it perfectly. So, for 1,650 points, you're getting the Hydra. It causes terror, like I mentioned before. It has an armor of 60, guys, which is not too bad if you think about it. It has a thing called scaly skin, and this is something that I feel like a lot of people do, kind of overlook. It pretty much has a bronze shield. Hydras have a missile resist of 35%. So, a lot of times, like when you're facing like Dwarves or you're facing Empire, people will be scared to bring it because they're like, well, there's going to be artillery, there's going to be a bunch of Thunderers, there's going to be a lot of range units that would shut it down. But guys, I mean, don't be afraid. Like, there is a 35% missile resist, and you can also help protect it by using things such as Harpies and backline harass through Dark Riders and things like that. So the point is, it has a missile resist built in, and that is Mr. Resist also includes artillery pieces. It has a melee attack of 52, and it is armor piercing. Melee defense 26, but this is to be expected. I mean, you're fighting a huge colossal monster. If you're fighting that thing, I mean, it's going to be pretty hard to miss. Its weapon strength is really powerful. 440 weapon strength, and 300 of this is armor piercing. So, what does that mean? That means that you throw this into a unit of Empire Knights, throw this into a unit of Great Swords, throw this into a unit of Longbeards, it has the damage to destroy it. It also has a charge bonus of 60, guys. So, yeah, the Hydra could be used in several different ways. You can use it for its charge bonus, send it into combat, charge, and then pull it out and just, rinse and repeat. Or if you see you're in a favorable engagement, for example, say you send it to a unit of miners or a unit of swordsmen or, sword masters or something like that. Well, you can leave it in. It has both the combat stats to be left in combat or the charge bonus to, fight it with it that way. So it kind of gives you a little bit of versatility with the Hydra. With this unit, you also get 3 breath attacks. So this is the fire breath attacks. And the fire breath attacks, guys, are great versus infantry and low armor cav. I wouldn't necessarily use it against like a unit of Chosen. I mean, you can. It will do damage to it. But I find that it does a lot better versus things like Clan Rats, High Elf Spearmen, any kind of missile unit, Dwarven, Dwarf Warriors, Dark Riders, things like that. So it's, pretty much use it like you would a Dragon's Breath attack weapon. And you do get 3 charges of it. So keep in mind, guys, when you do try to use a breath attack, you can't do it if your unit's in combat. So what I like to do with the Hydra is when you're actually coming up on the approach, when your front lines are getting ready to climb with your enemies, specifically have the Hydra shoot its fire attacks, its first one, before sending it into combat. You always want to get that first fire attack, because if you do, I mean, you're pretty much going to take a unit down to half health, and 9 times out of 10, it's just going to instantly rout, which means that you just took a unit off. You can send your Hydra to fight a different, spear unit or whatever, and it just kind of, it's such a powerful tool not to use. Would just be a waste. The Hydra obviously has regeneration, and how this works, it's called one will take its place, I believe what it's called, and when it's below 50% life, it will start to regenerate. So yeah, keep in mind, guys, it's when it's below 50% life is when it regenerates, not above. And one of the catches, one of the catch-22s, one of the weaknesses to the Hydra, obviously, is fire damage, guys. So, things like salamanders are a really good counter to this. So in the Lizardman matchup, you have to be really, really careful about bringing this. Also, flame cannons, the Knights of the Blazing Sun will absolutely just shred it through a Hydra. So you got to kind of be smart and try to, it's very situational, which I'll kind of explain a bit, later in this guide. So yeah, just use that, or keep that in mind. Also, this is probably the most important thing that I find with Hydras, is it's best used alongside infantry to complement a front line. So yeah, you don't necessarily want to send it in by itself. Have it fighting a unit all by itself. Like, it works best if you have a unit of bleak swords mixed in, fighting amongst the Hydra. The bleak swords will take the damage, and the Hydra will take or do the damage. So, yeah, I mean, now don't get me wrong. If you're in in combat and your bleak swords are fighting a unit, you could pull the Hydra away to maybe get into a back line to fight an archer unit to shut it down, or you could even, if you see a unit of what are they called? Miners or something like that. I mean, it is capable of fighting by itself, especially since it does cause terror. But yeah, its melee defense is kind of low, guys, so it is going to be getting hit a lot. So that's why I say you want to leave it, used alongside infantry. Next, guys, we have the Crudest, and this was a unit that was added in the Queen and the Crone DLC pack, and it is such a cool unit. It has such a cool trait, and yeah, here's the trailer, so we're going to go ahead and look at this one, guys, because it's also really, really cool. Such an amazing DLC pack. I was so pleased with the Queen and the Crone. Here it comes. A face a mother could love. So yeah, bonus versus large units, I mean, that is its big selling point. That tree man's going to get absolutely shredded. Yes, the Abyssal Hell, guys. Such a great trait to have. Poison attacks, which they spelled poison wrong. Alright guys, so yeah, that's the Crudest. So let's go ahead and look about what the Crudest is. So it is a loathsome beast from the uncharted depths, seldom seen on land save when the Dark Elves go one to war. So yeah guys, so cool. It costs 1,800, and it's an anti-large specialist. It causes terror, like I was saying, and it has a great synergy with the Lore of Death. So, yeah, there's two specific spells in the Lore of Death where this will work great. One is the one that lowers leadership, where you can overcast it. What is it called? Power of Darkness, Gloom and Doom. Yeah, I'd have to look at it. It's the first 3 spells of the Lore of Death. I should have probably looked that up. One of them will put terror onto a unit, so if you cast it on like a unit of Bleak Swords or Dread Spears, they cause terror. Or the other one will actually lower leadership. You can do it of a unit specific, like one unit, or you overcast it. It does an area of effect. So if you have a Crudest fighting in the front line, and you overcast that spell, you just lowered all their leadership on top of the Abyssal Hell of the Crudest, which is going to lower it by, I believe it is 8. Yep, 8 minus 8. So what I'm trying to get at is the Crudest will absolutely just shut down a front line. So you say you have a front line of 5, 6 clan rats. You send the Crudest in, you overcast that Lore of Death spell, and all of a sudden the front line has just collapsed. Allows your units to get into the back line, shut down the artillery pieces, shut down the range units, and the game is yours. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. I've featured that same strategy on my channel several times. If you look at some of the back catalog of some of the games I've played, you'll see this strategy, specifically used in action. And so, yeah, what I was talking about with the Abyssal Hell, guys, what it does, it's just a constant area of effect debuff, and it lowers leadership by minus 8 in a 30-meter radius. So, yeah, 30-meter radius is pretty much like the same as the leadership buff of your Lord. So if you ever put your mouse cursor over, like, your hero, or over, something that has, like, the Encourage trait, you'll see a little blue circle. And that's showing, anything that's within that circle is either getting that buff, or in this case, is going to be getting debuff. It has 60 armor, same as the Hydra, and it also has the scaly skin. So what that means, guys, is it's getting a a missile resist of 35%. So same as the Hydra, it pretty much has a bronze shield. That's just great. I mean, I feel like so many people overlook that. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Like, you don't have to be afraid to bring these units in, missile-heavy armies, or against missile-heavy armies like the Dwarf or the Empire. Now, you don't want it to take, like, 4 cannons shooting it in the face. You definitely want to support it, but it does have that little bonus, armor and missile resist that will keep it alive. It has a melee attack of 55, which is pretty decent. But yeah, poison attacks. That's a really big seller for it. So it's going to be, whatever it's attacking is going to be getting debuffed. So that will help it win one-on-one fights with either lords, anti-large units. Like, I find the Crudest is really good on, like, single duels. It's really good versus, like, a Carnosaur. It's really good versus a Mammoth. It's really good versus a Carl France on a Griffin. Like, I feel like it's a little bit better than that, than it is just going one-on-one against, like, cav units, which it can't do. But if you send, like, a unit of Demigryphs versus the Crudest, the Demigryphs will usually win because it's going to be able to do more attacks than the Crudest can. It's going to be, you're going to have 5 or 6 Demigryphs hitting it, every one time that the Crudest gets one of its attacks off. So I find the Crudest is really good at shutting down, other monster units, more than it is going against, like, cav units. But don't get me wrong, it can deal with cav units. But if you're going to use the strategy, you probably want to have other cav units to help support the Crudest. And yeah, it's obviously armor piercing, guys, so I think that's important. It wouldn't be able to do a lot of damage if it didn't have really good armor piercing. Same as the Hydra, it has a melee defense of 30, which means, it's going to be taking some hits. And keep in mind, this one doesn't have regeneration, so you have to be kind of smart with it. You can't regenerate any damage, the Crudest takes. It's there for good. Weapon strength of 500, 350 of this is armor piercing damage, and it has a 30 bonus versus large, guys. So that's a pretty beefy bonus versus large. And that's what I was trying to say. Like, this thing is a great one-on-one dueler. It is meant to snipe enemy lords. Like a vampire lord comes on a black dragon, a Krokgar up on its Carnosaur. Like, yeah, the Crudest is your answer for it. It is aquatic, which, yeah, like I was saying, it will not suffer penalty for fighting or moving in water. The same as like when you fight in trees or in the forest, you suffer a penalty. I don't necessarily know how much of a penalty it is, but it's the same with water. So that's why units like the Lizardmen, Skinks have advantage, on maps that have water. You always want to bring the Crudest. If you see that you're going to be fighting on a map that has water, this will give you a good edge. And yeah, it's used to counter enemy cav or to break front lines with his Abyssal Hell. So, like I was kind of saying at the beginning of this slide here, guys, the Abyssal Hell is by far one of the most unique traits of any other monster. And it's not always going to be good against some. Like, it's really good against Skaven. It's really good against Greenskins. It's really good against like Bretonia. It has like really low leadership. Pretty much any armor that has, it's already known for having low leadership, the Crudest is really good against. Now, things like vampire counts or, stuff like that, well, leadership doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not that they're going to rout. This is what you want the Crudest for, is to rout units, to cause them to run off, which just means that your army can advance and get into a back line. So, yeah, against like vampire counts or Tomb Kings and things like that, that Abyssal Hell is not going to be as powerful. Next, we come to the Black Dragon, guys. And yeah, the Black Dragon is capable of slaughtering entire armies with its claws, horns, and fangs. With the explosions, of noxious gas from its maw, it can wither the lungs of its victims and desiccate their flesh. So yeah, that's pretty gruesome. This thing costs 2,100, and just a little lore nugget for you guys. Malekith is the one who created the Black Dragon. So yeah, he stole some eggs of the High Elves, either the Blue Dragons, the Sun Dragons, Star Dragons, whatever it is, and he like corrupted them through dark magic, and he created the Black Dragon breed, which is very powerful, a lot more vicious, obviously corrupted dragon. This thing causes terror. It has a speed of 90, so yeah, very fast for a big flying monster. So think of, Dany Targaryen up on her dragon. You have a lot of mobility, which can kind of, come in handy. This one has a lot more armor than the Crudest or the Hydra. It has 80, and it also has scaly skin, but it has a missile resist of 25 instead of the 35 of the Hydra and the Crudest. So yeah, it's a little bit lower, but at least you're still getting some. It has a melee attack of 46, which is armor piercing, really important. Melee defense of 50, so yeah, this one has a lot more melee defense from the Crudest. I believe the Crudest was like 30 or something like that, so that comes in handy. What does that mean? It means they'll be able to stay in combat a lot longer, or it can stay in sustained combat a lot more effectively than a Crudest or a Hydra can. It's not going to be getting hit as much. It has a weapon strength of 520, which is the highest weapon strength of any Dark Elf monster unit, and 380 of this is AP, so that is just massive damage, guys. Its char bonus is 50, which is middle of the road, and yeah, I mean, you can use the Black Dragon to either cycle charge or leave in sustained combat. It's very situational and versatile. So, I mean, the way I like to use a Black Dragon is obviously getting off the breath attacks. I think that's obviously just like a Hydra, that's so important. If you're going to pay this much to get a unit, you need to get the breath attacks to kind of make it worth it. But yeah, I will send it in, maybe land it in on an archer unit, or maybe I'll pull it out. Maybe I'll do a rear charge into the front infantry line to try to, free up some of my units. I'll pull it out, But if you need to use some of your micro elsewhere, you can leave the dragon in. It has enough melee defense and it has enough armor that it's not going to instantly get melted. But you can also, like I was trying to say, it has a high enough charge bonus where you can send it in, cycle charge, or leave it into combat. It has noxious breath attacks. You get 3 charges, and yeah, it's strong versus a single unit, which means it's strong versus infantry, guys. Some breath attacks excel at like single entities, like maybe like a giant, or some of them are really good against single units or mass globs and things like that, like a Star Dragon and a Black Dragon. So great swords are perfect, things like that. Blackguard and Aggron. Pretty much, the Black Dragon's breath attack is good against armor too. So you can use it against, Blackguard and Aggron. So Executioners, you can use it against Sword Masters. You can use it against Hammers. So it's pretty powerful. And like I noted here, guys, you always want to use those breath attacks. Like if you're not using your breath attacks, you're wasting your gold 9 times out of 10. And you get 3 of them. And keep in mind, you can't use the breath attacks when you're in combat. So if when you come in, you send your Black Dragon down onto the ground to attack, you have to get him back into the air, obviously, to be able to use it. So that kind of gives you a incentive to cycle charge. You get your Black Dragon, you do your initial charge, let him attack for like maybe 10, 15 seconds, then get him back in the air, get your next breath attack, and then, just rinse and repeat. Next, we have my favorite monster unit, the Dark Elves. One that is just so cost-effective that it's just such a powerful tool, and it's the Pharaoh Manticore. And obviously Chaos has access to the Manticore, and so I believe the Beastman does as well. So it's not unique to the Dark Elves, but I mean it's such a powerful tool that I'm glad the Dark Elves actually have it. And the Manticores are huge, Leonie beasts, Leonie. I'm not even sure how you say that. That soar on leathery wings. They're amongst the most powerful of all the predators that live in the North Mountain ranges. So these guys cost 800, which is super cost effective. 800, guys, for everything that you're getting in this package. It will rampage, so you got to avoid taking the damage until you're ready to commit. So when you're like coming up on an army, what I like to do is I'll zigzag my Manticores. Like if your opponent starts to try to shoot at it with cannons or anything like that, but just zigzag. Try to keep it going from the right to the left. Try to avoid any damage until you're ready to actually send it into combat. And once you do, as I say right here, use it as a heat-seeking missile. Point it in the right direction and then forget. Once you land the Manticore on the target that you want, you don't have to waste any more time or your micro on it. Just leave it in the combat. Almost use it as an expendable unit. But make sure that it's getting to its desired target. Like if it rampages into a unit of Slayers, well then that's just a waste. But if it rampages into a unit of Thunderers, well then that works for you. It causes terror, which is in my opinion the most valuable trait and the point of this unit. It's terror. For 800 gold, I mean, you send 2 of these into a back line and it just shuts it down instantly. Especially, like I said, with the Crudest or things like that, if it's Abyssal Hell or the Lore of Death, if it's leadership debuff, you just have so many options that could really exploit the weaknesses of units like Greenskin, Skaven, and like some of the ones I mentioned before. Now, the Manticore does not have a high enough missile, or doesn't have the same missile resistance as a Hydra and the Crudest with its 35. This one only has 15%, so it's a lot more exposed, a lot more vulnerable to missile units, but at least it has a little bit of something. It only has an armor of 45, but like I said, guys, they're heat-seeking missiles. They're made to get in there, do a whole crap load of damage, and then get killed. Melee attack is 40, melee defense of 34, but 445 weapon strength, guys. So, I mean, for 800 gold, you're getting 445 missile strength, and there is a big portion of that is armor piercing. Now, it doesn't say armor piercing, but it's in the 200s, I do believe, that the Pharaoh Manticore. So, you could sit it in against high armor units, and it still will do damage. And some of the roles it's good at, guys, is shutting down missile and artillery units, and it's a great counter to Lizardmen air supremacy. So, with the new DLC pack, the Lizardmen now control the air. But, Dark Elves have tools to counter against that. You have things like the Raven Heralds, Dark Riders of Repeater Crossbows, you got Black Ark Corsairs of Handbows, and now you have, Pharaoh Manticores. And these guys can actually shred through Pterodons. They can, hold their own against Riperdactyls. You get 2 of them with the support of some Black Ark Corsairs or some Dark Riders of Repeater Crossbows. You're going to control the air. And winning the air is, will win you the battle 9 times out of 10. So, what are some of my final thoughts on the monster units of the Dark Elves? They're very situational. The way I look at it is they're a surgical knife instead of a blunt force hammer. So, what I mean from that, guys, is that it's useful in certain matchups. Like, the Crudest is good, not in every single matchup. It's good in specific matchups. The Manticore is good in specific engagements, like shutting down a missile line or an artillery. A Hydra is good versus, like, Norska, but it's not going to be too good maybe against something like Bretonia or something like that. So, what I'm trying to say is you don't want to bring a monster unit every single time time, and not every monster unit is going to be as effective as the other in each different matchup. So you kind of have to learn which unit is good in each one. For example, like I said, the Charybdis is good in the greenskins. The Hydra is really good against dwarfs, in my opinion, or against Empire. They have unique traits such as regeneration, the Abyssal Hell, and anti-large attack. So yeah, that's one of the really cool things about the Dark Elves is their monster units actually have unique traits, and they're not just damage dealers. Like, for example, a Bastillodon is just a damage dealer. A Mammoth is just a damage dealer. Like, yeah, our monsters here in the Dark Elves can either regenerate, they're lowering their leadership, they're getting breath attacks, they have anti-large attacks. So I feel like that's kind of cool. Puts a little flavor on those units. They work best in unison with other units and cav units. So yeah, rarely do you want to have a Dark Elf monster unit just by itself. You want to have it surrounded by some spears. You want to have it, surrounded by some Cold One Knights. You want it working with your line to complement it versus just being front. Like you'll never just send a Hydra to be your front line. Hydra's going to support that front line and just make it a lot more powerful. And rarely should you bring more than one monster unit per match. The exception is a Manticore. So yeah, guys, you rarely, sometimes, you can surprise people, but rarely are you going to take 2 Hydras, or you're going to take a Hydra and a Crudest. Like, usually just one, it will be sufficient. Now, don't get me wrong, there is some surprise builds where you could bring more than one, but this is generally what I find through I got 3,000 plus hours playing on multiplayer, so I have a little bit of experience on this, guys. One will usually do the trick for you guys. And then lastly, Manticores are an amazing tool. To shut down enemy back lines, archers, artilleries, flying units. They're especially good versus Dwarf Rangers and Thunderers, Skaven skirmish units, Empire range units, and Lizardman air units. So yeah, Manticores and Harpies are some of the most valuable tools of the Dark Elves. Because you win with the Dark Elves through backline harass. I've said that in my other guides. I say that in most of my replays. That is how you win in the Dark Elves, is shutting down your enemy's backline. And Manticores excel at that. So, alright guys. I know that was a little bit of a quicker guide. There's only, 4 monsters to actually discuss. But I hope that kind of helps you. Eventually, I think the next guide I'm going to do is going to be the actual Dark Elf strategy guide, which we will take all this information that we've gained from my Dark Elf unit guide, the cavalry guide, and now the monster guide, and I'm going to show you guys how to use it. We're going to actually discuss different strategies, different builds. I'm going to show you the proper way of using those units. For example, what's the proper way of using what's it called? A Hydra. When should you get their breath attack out? Which way should you attack? When's the right way to send your Manticore in? What's the timing for it? When do you want to send the Manticore in? Do you want to send it in before your army reaches it? Do you want to wait till your army hits, is actually engaged? Things like that. Those are going to be things I'm going to focus in on my strategy guide, which will be the next thing that I work on. So now we have looked at every single unit that the Dark Elf roster has. We've talked about it in detail. Its weapon strength. Its missile resistance. Its traits. In my cavalry guide, we talked about murderous mastery. In my unit guide, we broke down what poison damage does. What are the actual benefits of it. So, you guys now have a intimate knowledge of the mechanics of the Dark Elves, of the of their strengths and their weaknesses as well. So I look forward to bringing you guys the strategy guide. I hope this one is very informative for you. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is Atticus, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for your support. And like I said, if you guys are new to the channel, check out my unit guide and my cavalry guide. I will link it in the description. I know when I made those guides, I only had 50 subscribers, and since then we've gained 150 more. We're quickly getting ready to reach 250 subscribers, which is just amazing. So yeah, give those guides a looking, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.